is where I am. This is what I need to do. I used to do that with my sponsor a lot. He's out there running around doing all the spiritual stuff. I'm back here just getting angry on a daily basis. I'm trying to be that instead of, facing what I have, doing what he did to get rid of his. Okay. And how often we work hard with no better motive than to be secure and slothful later on. We call that retiring. Consider, too, our talents for procrastination. Anybody talented in that area? Pretty good. Well, it's a reason. There's a reason it's not called amateur procrastination. This is procrastination. Yeah, because we aren't amateurs at it, right? I can procrastinate with the best of them.
Well, I'm still trying to keep my amateur status until after the Olympics.
Consider, too, our talent for procrastination, which is really sloth in 5 syllables. Nearly anyone could submit a good list of such defects as these, and few of us would seriously think of giving them up, at least until they cause us excessive misery. And that's one of the things I began to find. I had claimed an awful lot of willingness at step 6 that I really didn't have. And so as misery piled up in various areas of my life, that's what made me a little bit more ready to have these things removed and to be honest about them. Okay, so see, what you can expect, is if you can't find the willingness and the honesty to actually put this step into practice in your life, you can expect an increasing amount of misery popping up from these things. And stuckness, and confusion, and all that sort of stuff coming out of it. Because remember, all this stuff is progressive. And if the problem isn't solved, then it's going to continue and get worse. And so, that's where the responsibility for all this can't be put on anybody else but each of us individually. We're either going to take this seriously or we're not. We're seriously trying to grow in God's will and view for us, or we're not seriously trying to do that. We're deceiving ourselves or we're not. It's a very simple thing to look at, but it's a tough bullet for most of us to bite, because nobody can do it for you. There's nothing here that money can buy. Not a single thing here that money can buy. Not a single thing here that can be lied about. Things either become true or they don't. And they're all things that arrive in our lives as a result of the power greater than ourselves. Yeah.
This is what I call a guarantee of the program.
I didn't hear you.
I say this is what I call a guarantee of the program. Unless we're ready to look at these and seriously think of giving them up, it will cost us excessive misery. And it's guaranteed.
Okay. There are lots of promises, and not all of them are fun. Okay, last line on page 67 says, some people, of course, may conclude that they are indeed ready to have all such defects taken from them. But even these people, if they construct a list, and that's what we're going to do now, it's the real reason I wanted to read this whole thing, was so that we could talk about constructing a list, a way to take a thorough view of this. If they construct a list of still mild defects, we'll be obliged to admit that they prefer to hang on to some of them, and it may be most of them. But remember, unwillingness is not the real problem. It's dishonesty and inaction that is the real problem. So as long as we're honest about, what we want to hang on to, we're not going to get in that much trouble. And what you'll find also, is that if you're honest about unwillingness, that will alleviate a whole lot of the misery that comes from the inaction and the dishonesty. You'll still have the character defect, but the misery that comes along with inaction and dishonesty, won't be there. Okay, so therefore it seems plain. So does it seem plain to you? That few of us can quickly or easily become ready to aim at spiritual and moral perfection. Do you really want to be perfect? Anybody here want to be? We're all perfectionists and idealists, right? Have been most of our life, but it comes right down to, do you really want to be perfect spiritually and morally? I don't think any of us really, really want to do that. So there's a danger in that. It's okay to have that point of view, but there is a danger in it. It says we want to settle for only as much perfection as will get us by. And then comes a danger in that. According, of course, to our various and sundry ideas, of what will get us by. See? And that's called my own program. See, my own agenda. I'm working on it. See, and all that kind of stuff. See, and that can get very dangerous, see, if you're an alcoholic. Okay? So the difference between the boys and the men, see, and the girls and the women, see, growing up, see, and all that, is the difference between striving for a self-determined objective, see, our own agenda, and for the perfect objective, which is God's. And that's where we all need to be really honest with ourselves here at step 6. Whose will do you really want to do? See, and what path are you going to follow? We all got lots of, I've done this myself. I hear it in meetings all the time. Somebody will be sitting there. I'm just sure God wants me to marry this woman or that guy or get this job. You ever hear that stuff? It's a totally self-determined objective going on, and somebody saying this is God's will. See, and this is self-delusion going on in the person. See? But we really, really, really want to believe it because that's what we really, really, really want to have happen. See? So I can understand why people do that. See, I've done it myself. See? And I also understand that it can present some serious problems in a person's life, especially if they want to recover. Okay, so many will at once ask, how can we accept the entire implication of step 6? Why, that is perfection. See, this sounds like a hard question, but practically speaking, it isn't. The only step 1 where we made 100% admission we were powerless over alcohol can be practiced with absolute perfection. The remaining 11 steps state perfect ideals. They are goals towards which we look, and the measuring sticks by which we estimate our progress. Seen in this light, step 6 is still difficult, but not at all impossible. See, and I hope you're really beginning to see what he's saying there. See, this is not about being a perfect white light experience, cosmic cowboy at step 6. About, see, accepting your faults, whatever they are, see, accepting your imperfections and your character defects, whatever they are, facing them, see, turning them over to God, see, and becoming willing, see, to have change arrive in your life. See, not trying to be perfect, just be willing to be human, admit you got some work to do. It's really, you see what he's saying? And most, a lot of us hang on to this perfectionism kind of thing, and it really gets in the way of our growth. Okay. The only urgent thing is that we do what?
Keep trying.
Yeah. What's the chapter title of chapter 6? Into action. You got to start. Willingness is indispensable, and keep into action. The real point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. So, major leaps and bounds and all that is not the big deal. Lots of cosmic insight is not the big deal. Action is the big deal. Okay? Action, say you got a spiritual defense. No action, you're on your own. The umbrella's closed, you're going to get wet. Okay. If we would gain any real advantage in the use of this step on problems other than alcohol, we shall need to make a brand new venture into what? Open-mindedness. Okay, a lot of us hang on to the idea that dealing with our feelings and self-control and self-esteem and love and little children within is going to solve the problems of these character defects. What's your experience? Does it? That stuff does not solve these things or remove. Okay. We need a brand new venture into open-mindedness. We shall need to raise our eyes toward what? Yeah. Toward perfection. It doesn't say we need to be perfect. We need to raise our eyes toward perfection. Okay. And be ready to walk in that direction. Say, are you? See, these are things that you need to be asking yourself and taking an honest look at. It will seldom matter how haltingly we walk. The only question is, are we ready? Are we willing? Are we going to do it? Okay. So notice how he says in a bunch of different ways. See, it's really the action that you take and the willingness that's important. Okay. Looking again at those defects we are still unwilling to give up, we ought to erase the hard and fast lines that we've drawn. See, perhaps we shall be obliged in some cases to say, this I cannot give up yet. But we should not say to ourselves, this I will never give up. Okay, so I love that line, especially when I was first into step 6, because there were a lot of things. It was real clear to me that I couldn't or wouldn't even consider giving up. And so that's what I said. I just said a prayer about it. I was trying to be honest with God and anybody else that was involved. And I am not willing here, see, but I'm not going to say never on it. Okay? But today, no way. Maybe tomorrow. See, that's good enough. It was good. See, willingness came. So let's dispose of what appears to be a hazardous open end we have left. It is suggested that we ought to become entirely willing to aim toward perfection. We note that some delay, however, might be pardoned. That word, in the mind of a rationalizing alcoholic, could certainly be given a long-term meaning. See, like next lifetime. Or 3 lifetimes from now. Okay, he could say, very easy, sure, I'll head toward perfection, but I'm certainly not going to hurry any. Maybe I can postpone dealing with some of my problems indefinitely. Maybe, maybe not. See, of course, this won't do. See, that's a kidding, self-delusion that's going on. Such a bluffing of oneself will have to go the way of many another pleasant rationalization. So you might ask yourself if you have any number of pleasant rationalizations, see, that excuse you from spiritual action. See, do those things just kind of pop up, get believed without any, real, honest examination? At the very least, we shall have to come to grips with some of our worst character defects and take action toward their removal as quickly as we can. And see, for some people, I hope that you're all beginning to do a lot of work with others, or at least starting to, see, and you really begin to be aware, see, of the absolute necessity of this in somebody's life. See, they ain't got 90 meetings, see, to go to. See, they're probably not going to make it 3 months. See, they need to be into action like right now, yesterday, day before yesterday. See, some of the people, see, that walk into your life, see, needing some help, see, they don't need it in 90 days, and they don't need a hug, so they need action going on, boom, see, RFN. And this can get real critical, real serious, real fast. And one of the things I found in myself is that, see, as long as I was willing to excuse myself from spiritual work, see, I was willing to give everybody else a break on it too. And I was unwilling to tell people who really needed to be told the truth. See, and that was coming out of, see, because I couldn't tell it to me. So if you might look for that. See if you find that in yourself. It's real hard to carry the message to somebody at any point where you don't have it. Okay, the moment we say no, never, see what happens? Our mind's closed. See, boom. Okay, see, and this is where things can get real dangerous if you're really an alcoholic. So the moment we say no, never, our minds close against the grace of God. Okay, see, and that is the problem. See, you're no longer spiritually fit. At this point, see, you can deal with feelings, discuss your problems, you can announce you're an alcoholic, you can write an inventory, you can do anything. No God, see, you're in danger. See, right, does everybody see the criticality of that one? The mind's closed against the grace of God. Delay is dangerous. Let's all read the rest of the sentence together. Rebellion, see, may be fatal. See, rebellion is, pretty common for most of us, and in terms of recovery, it can be a pretty good thing. But rebellion against God's will for us and spiritual growth, see, is not a wise course of action for any of us. Literally, when you ever get the idea, see, I'd go along, see, and here I got these clear-cut things I was supposed to be doing, and I'd get a pleasant rationalization that told me I didn't need to do it, and then shit would start happening in my life, almost immediately. Bam! And then I'd start saying, well, God's punishing me again, see, for not. See, God's not doing that. See, it took me a while to catch on to that. See, I live in this world, see, where I'm selfish and self-centered, see, and it never was God punishing me. See, God will help me and protect me along the way. See, it's like a big umbrella. See, and all I got to do is keep the umbrella open and keep walking, and I do all right. See, as soon as I close the umbrella, I get wet. See, and then I blame that on God. See, like I'm getting punished. See, it's not God. He's not saying that God is going to kill us for closing our minds. See, God doesn't do that. See, that's just the price we pay in this world that we're living in. See, that operates on spiritual laws. See, if I'm selfish and self-centered, I get my chain yanked real fast. And you may too. See, we call it, in Sacramento, we call that a short leash. Any of you ever had a dog, you tie him up in the backyard, long rope, see, and he goes and runs around a tree. See, and within about 5 minutes, it's like this, and he can't go anywhere. See, that's what happens to an alcoholic running on self-will. Okay, so delay is dangerous. So you got to see, what does delay look like in your life? See what goes on with you when you delay and rebel and all that. See? Delay is dangerous. Rebellion may be fatal. See? And this is the exact point at which we abandon limited objectives. See, self-determined objectives, our own agendas, all that kind of stuff. See, and move toward God's will for us. So it's really almost like a decision point one more time. Okay? It's not a perfection point. Everybody pretty clear about that? All right, now, let's see. Let's go back to the book and talk about the list that they mentioned over here on page 68 about constructing a list.
If anyone needs a basement that's right around that corner there, into that article.
We gotta go. We can take a break. Okay. Okay. And if you would, go back to page 13. Bill's story. Here's Bill, detoxing in the hospital. See, he takes the Oxford steps. See, but all 12 steps are there on page 13. If you go to the second, towards the bottom of the second paragraph, where he says, my newfound friend, became willing to have my newfound friend, take them. He has ruthlessly faced his sins, his fourth step, became willing to have his newfound friend, take them away. And it says two things. Number one is root, the other one is branch. Did you mark 6 and 7 there?
Yeah.
You want to do the book study? Okay, now we're going to take a look at that. A lot of people get confused about step 6 and 7, what's the difference and what does all this mean and all that kind of stuff. Okay, if we look at root as something under the surface or in us, inside us, branch is something above the surface or outside of us. Okay, so where do character defects exist? If you got lust, where is it? It's not outside, it's on the inside. See, outside it may look like I love you, baby. See, inside it may look like lust. Okay? So if we put, we'll call this the soil of selfishness right here. We'll just write some of these character defects here. Anger, pride, sloth, greed, gluttony. What did I leave off? Envy. See, most people put fear down here also as a character defect inside. And it's just something that you can look at. Okay. So here are the roots, see, inside of me. You know, something that, these are my character defects. They are here. See, I'm beginning to see that by doing my fourth and fifth step. Okay. And now out here in the world, see, people, see, as well as myself, can tell that I have character defects. See, not because they can see inside, but they can see what's coming out of them. See, what's branching out or growing out of my character defects. So let's say I've got a character defect called I lie. Okay? Here's a little flower of lies right here. Alright, now what character defect might lying have as its roots?
Pride.
Pride, sure. No doubt about it. Okay, so pride could be the root of lying. See, I don't want people to know what's really going on with me, the kind of guy I really am. I got this act of pretense running on. See, so I'm lying about it. See, but I've lied as a result of lust.
Yeah.
And I have lied as a result of my anger. Okay? So one kind of a shortcoming can have its roots in a lot of different kinds of character defects. See, and this is something that I had never quite understood before I took the steps. I thought just about everything could be traced directly to one or another character defect, see, but not so. All right, what's another shortcoming that a human being might have? gossip. Gossip's a shortcoming? Okay. Where would it have its envy? Where's envy in this thing? Okay. Anger, pride, okay. Fear, lust, you bet. Yeah, definitely. Okay. See, so the roots of these things, see, can spread out, things can get very tangled, and a lot of that kind of thing. Beginning to see that? All right, now did any of you find that, as it said in the description of the actor on page 60 and 61, see that we have some pretty good traits like modest, self-sacrificing, gracious, kind, all that. Did you find that you may have some character defects that look good? Okay. Like there are, see, kindnesses that I've done in my life that came directly out of pride, directly out of lust. See, that's why I bought the flowers. See, that's why I told the truth. See, sometimes, you know, there were things I did that looked pretty honest to other people. The absolute only reason I did that was out of fear. Okay. But nobody else knew that but me. See, so there are times I've been generous to other people. See, I liked having people think I was generous. Oh, he's generous to a fault. He'll do this, he'll do that. See, directly, see, out of pride. At its roots. See, so there were even good-looking kind of asset sort of things in my life. See, which were really shortcomings. And when you'll see when we get into the 7-step prayer, how you know, the word, the prayer, the good and the bad. See, I'm offering it all, the good and the bad. See, and I didn't really understand the prayer until I started to look at this. So some of the seeming nice, generous, keen kind of I love you kind of things in my life, see, really had the roots in my character defects. See, I couldn't even be kind sincerely. I couldn't even be generous sincerely. See, I couldn't do something for somebody else sincerely or unselfishly because it was coming out of here and what other people would think and how I wanted to appear and all that kind of stuff. Okay, see, so you see that there might be a whole lot of these things, see, all of which can have their roots in various places down here. Okay, this is inside, see, this is the manifestations, see, of what's going on inside. Okay, does that make sense, everybody?
Big Book talks about that a lot when they talk about our seemingly harmless motives. To me, that seems like the same to me as our motives.
Okay, so now what we want to do in step 6, first thing I want you to notice in the top of page 76 is that there is no instruction to write anything there. And you don't see a form there, do you? Page 76, first paragraph where they talk about step 6. There's no 2-column form. There's no instruction to write anything down. It's not a clear-cut direction out of the book. Therefore, what I'm about to show you, you don't have to do. See, this is just a way that I suggest to the people that I work with, see, to become clear about the things that are being talked about and what's objectionable about them and how they get in the way of our spiritual growth and service and all that kind of stuff. See, so just want you to realize that this is not in the book. It's just something that you can do if you want to do it. Just make a 2-column deal like this. This is pretty simple, doesn't take a lot of paper, and doesn't take all that much time. It'll show you a lot. Can you see that, Bob? No. Right, left-hand column is character defect, the right-hand column is shortcoming.
Okay.
Can you guys see red if I write it right? Everybody got it? All right, now, we'll just take the character defects that we found in the 12 and 12 and add fear to them, and take them one at a time. We'll start with pride. Okay? First thing you need to do is now go to a dictionary a good dictionary, find the definition of pride, see, and put it right here. See, what is pride according to your dictionary? And copy it out, put it down on paper. See? Then take an honest look at what does that definition mean to me in my own experience. See? What do I see now that I've done step 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? So in terms of pride, see, as a character defect. You know, what I want to see is the manifestations of pride in my life. See, my shortcomings. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is have a pretty clear understanding what pride actually is. Don't want to be misinformed about that. Then I want to start to ask myself, what are my shortcomings based on my character defect called pride? So what would some shortcomings based on pride be? We can start with lying. What else? Now, lust is its own character defect. Might cause you to lie about sexual stuff, but it caused me to brag, or to boast, to exaggerate.
Not speak up. Fear of looking stupid here.
Sure. Okay, well, we'll just put down not speak up or be shy or, whatever else. You can call that a bunch of stuff. That's a good one. Sure.
Lying by omission?
Huh?
Lying by omission?
Oh, yeah. Omit truth or, overlook things. See, there can be a bunch. Huh? See, a lot of the pretense in my life, the macho stuff that I did a lot of times, all that manly kind of stuff, a lot of the romantic pretense, a lot of the competence kind of pretense. I've had lots of acts and pretense in my life. So you're pretty much based on pride and fear. So what I just put out, it's not about taking, a long inventory. I just wrote down pretense. But pretense in my life was a major deal. So I've been full of it. Lots of areas, work, women, family, pretending, covering up,
Drink more than you.
Yeah.
Sure. Compulsive buying or something. You buy a lot of stuff that you don't even need out of pride. Just kind of trying to take people through
Sure.
Joneses and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Conspicuous consumerism.
Whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
Whatever, I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, so you start looking into this a little bit more. See, and you might find, that you're going to come up with a pretty good sized list, see, of things that are going on in your life, see, that are coming out of a character defect. See, how about excessive concern for appearance and clothes and all that kind of stuff?
But what do you call that when you put other people down because you want to look better or you want to, without being a gossip, that's telling something about them, but like saying, oh, but she's really such and such. She just
Conceit.
wasn't so heavy, or, she just do something about that gray hair or something. Really, it's coming from your own pride.
Judgmental?
Maybe that's what it is.
Judgment.
Yeah. So for that, you know what I mean? When you're really judging other people, usually it's because you're judging them in a negative, but it's coming out of your own pride.
Okay, see. Also, don't look at this just in terms of those kind of things. Look at problems you have in your life, like bad decisions, and indecision, and procrastination, indecisiveness.
Not asking for help.
Yeah, not asking for help. Ignorance, is a direct result of pride in many cases. There's lots of stuff. Not knowing how to handle a situation in your family or somebody you're working with, all that kind of stuff. And just getting stuck in many, many areas of our life. So, look at, what you would ordinarily consider the mundane problems of your life. And begin to see if you can trace them, to roots in yourself. Not, this is a problem that is unconnected, with what's going on in me. It's quite possibly connected with what's going on in me. Does that make sense? And this would, it takes, remember they call this a brand new venture into open-mindedness. Begin to look at, the crap that's going on in our life in a totally different way. The interesting thing about this is once you grab hold of this, it's really no fun to face, but you begin to see, then you don't have to live in crap. Once you begin to see that there's a solution to all the stuff that you're beginning to look at. Okay, there again. So, what you do, is this with every character defect. So you do it with pride, put down the evaluation, then look through your life. See, what kind of stuff goes on in your life that you can see is directly attributable, see, to character defect of pride. And then go to envy, greed, lust, gluttony. See, look them all up, be real clear. See what kind of applicability they have to your life. Right? See, one of the things that you will notice immediately is there will start to be duplication. See, things that were up here will be here, see, and you'll start to see that thing that has to do with the roots. See, put lust as the next one, lying will come up. See, okay, pretense will come up. See, all that sort of stuff. Okay, see, so one more time, see, just keep this brief, factual. You're not looking to write War and Peace again or redo inventories or anything. See, this is just, see, looking to see, if you just look at the list that we got here, which is just a few things, okay, and ask yourself if any of that has gone on with you. Now, if it does go on with you, would that get in the way of practicing spiritual principles? See, would it get in the way of your relationship with God? See, would it get in the way of being of service, see, to other people in Alcoholics Anonymous and in your families and your relationships and where you work and your other affairs in life? See, and you really begin to see what they're talking about in terms of how objectionable, see, this stuff really is. See, how it's literally, boom, see, obstacles that are in our path. And as long as they stay there, and as long as we have pleasant rationalizations, it's no big deal, they're going to stay there. See, and then every time something comes up, see, where that's in the way, see, you can't be of any service because it's in the way of stuff. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, now one more time I want to remind you that, see, the words construct a list aren't in the big book, they're in chapter 6 of the 12 and 12, so that's where this whole idea came from. So it's simply a way to help you look a little more closely at what step 6 and step 7 actually mean. It doesn't say to do it in the big book, so if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Okay, I want to take a smoke break. So
I was wondering.
some stuff that you can start to look at, and you begin to notice how your life goes and what relationship character defects have to problems and things in your life. One of them Joe mentioned during the break was can't accept a compliment. You ever had a problem with that? Can you see how pride might have something to do with that? See, it's somebody compliments how you dress, oh, this old rag. This is nothing, See, great meal, oh, it's nothing, I just threw it together. See, is that a form of dishonesty? See, that kind of stuff? See, quite often it is. See, and
Wait, I missed that one. What's the one of dishonesty?
somebody says, hey, this food is great, oh, it's nothing, it's just this, I just threw this together here. You slave all day over it, try to, worry about it for 2 days. Somebody eats it, says it's good, you go, oh, it's nothing. See, it's not an honest thing that is happening. A lot of us have trouble accepting compliments, letting people, say you're doing well or whatever. What's the flip side of not being able to accept a compliment? Have any trouble accepting criticism?
Yeah.
Even when it's constructive, somebody, who knows something, trying to help you. Or even if they're not trying to help you, but it's true. See, bam, see a collision quite often. See, that comes out of pride. So, those things, my pride really had a lot to do with my ignorance of spiritual things. The more I looked into this, the more I could see how that was so, how closed-minded I really was to a lot of things that came my way and things that I ought to be looking into and I don't, and how pride has a very big hold on me in that way, and how it can really keep me stuck. Some other things I wrote up there is don't listen. You ever find yourself, looking somebody in the eye and nodding your head, but loading up something else, not listening to what they have to say? It's very important, especially if you're going to work with other alcoholics, to become a good listener. In order to be listening, you can't be full of pride and loading up and have a closed mind and a bunch of opinions and judgments. You can see how that would get in the way of being of service to people, and how it would affect your work life and your family life and relationships and all that kind of stuff. So that can be, See, not listening was, one of the major shortcomings in my life. And I really didn't even notice that I couldn't do it until I tried to do it. Began to see how much noise was going on in here, and I really did need to rely on God to help me do something about that. So I could start to listen to what other people were actually saying, even if I didn't like them. Even if I didn't like hearing what I was hearing. I needed to hear it and to learn and to start taking my own initiative. So that can be a pretty major shortcoming. So if you got that one, see, that's something that needs to be solved. Assumptions. This is not assumptions into heaven. See, it's from the word assume. See, do you find that you assume a lot of things without examining them? See, assumptions are beliefs and prejudices of all kinds. See, I assume that somebody's going to be one way or another. I assume that they're going to be someplace at a certain time. I assume that they're like this, that, or the other thing. I assume a job is going to be... I got all these assumptions. See, and quite often these assumptions are strictly based on my pride. Sometimes my fear. Sometimes some other things. And then when my assumptions prove to be something other than the facts in a situation, I get angry and I get selfish and I get collisions and see, a lot of stuff starts to happen. If I'm assuming somebody's going to, think I'm the world's greatest guy and they don't, this stuff starts, all that. See, where's that come from? See, these are things that I had never considered had anything to do with character defects. And a lot of this stuff I would never even have called it a shortcoming. Stealing, that's a shortcoming, see, but not expectations and assumptions and all that sort of stuff. Okay, the next one is expectations. There's lots of forms of that. You ever daydream and fantasize and see, philosophize and see a lot of those kind of things. See, you see a lot of expectation in that. Does that ever get you in trouble or cause you unhappiness, get in the way of your relationships with other people, get in the way of being of service? Maybe something doesn't live up to your expectations of it. That would always piss me off. This ain't right. Okay? People pleasing. Most of us have a problem with that one. Where does that come from? Is people pleasing an honest position for a human being? See, generally not. See, but I would die for other people's approval. See, pats on the back and other folks telling me how well I was doing. Aren't you good? And aren't you wise and wonderful and smart? I just, yes. Flattery, on and on and on. But,
Does that come from not having any pride? You need to please other people and feel good about yourself?
well, that's what I thought until I really looked at it. Well, yeah, that's my experience, but see, it could be different for you, or in your experience. So it's just something that you really need to look into. Next one is lectures. Anybody lecture anybody else?
Somebody under it.
Yeah. I just, went back in my own experience, all the times I've been lectured and what goes on in me when I have been lectured. And I began to notice how much I would lecture other people on their shortcomings and faults. And I've been doing that all my life. What must go on with them when I do it to them? See, it's probably something similar to what goes on with me when they do it to me. And this is a pretty unworkable thing. One of the things that the book says, if you remember on page 18, where it's given the qualifications for a sponsor and what works in working with others. See, one of those is no lectures to be endured, no attitudes of holier than that. See, no being superior, I'm better than you. See, do it my way, you dumb shit. See, all that sort of stuff. Lecturing, opinions. Anybody opinionated in here? See, a lot of us, we carry these opinions around. We never examine them for the truth. We're just right. Tons of real right opinions that don't work. So the same thing with judgments, snap judgments on all kinds of things. The worth of things, and the value of things, how people are, and all that kind of stuff. I would, it would even get into working with others. I would have my big book underlined and highlighted and da-da-da-da-da. And then I'd be working with somebody else like Joe. See, we're sitting there going through the book, see, and every time we get to something I have highlighted, I start pounding on Joe on that sentence, see, or that place that made a big difference to me. Never realized it might not mean shit to him, but the next sentence I didn't highlight is the one he needs to hear. See, but he ain't gonna get it because I'm pounding on. I got made this judgment that what he needs to hear is what I needed to hear. See, what he needs to look at is what I needed to look at. See, and that's quite often not the case. See, but that was my opinion, my judgment. It had nothing to do with relying on God and trying to be of service to Joe. So, you know, this stuff, see, infected service in Alcoholics Anonymous as well as all the other areas of my life. So you start to just begin to look and to notice that stuff. See, and the more you find, see, the more it's going to produce this thing called humility. See, we realize, you know, how deep the roots are and how complicated and paradoxical it all is and how much work is necessary and how it's really going to take a power greater than ourselves to begin to even solve the problem. See? And that's the real purpose of step 6 and 7. See, the change that needs to be produced really based at its root is humility. Humility means an awareness of one's defects and an absence of pride. This kind of discussion, see, no basis to understand really what it is that we're talking about. That we're on a path and, you know, moving on down. Okay. Does everybody understand this thing that I got up there?
Could I add one to assumption? I just thought of that one. When you assume that because you've been in the program for a little while, which really comes from pride, you don't have any more work to do. There's no
Sure.
more work to do
Good.
or something like that. We're even thinking about other people. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Now I'm this old in the program.
I don't know if any of you have had any attacks of spiritual pride yet, but this can really grab you by the throat. Early on, you remember, are you familiar with the history of AA at all? That Bill had the spiritual experience. He worked for 6 months, he and Evie, in Brooklyn, and he was dragging drunks off of bar stools and out of the Bowery and off the street, and his wife was cooking, and they were sleeping on the couches, and mayhem and all kinds of stuff was going on, and he was absolutely unsuccessful in working with all those people, and he began to get very discouraged about his lack of success. He was trying to give them a spiritual solution when they didn't understand the problem. And it was Dr. Silkworth who finally set him straight on, you have to make them feel hopeless, recognize the hopelessness of their condition before the spiritual experience they will be appealing or look like a solution to it. Okay? So, very similar thing happened to me as I was going along. They had all these major results and neat things were going on, and nobody would listen to me. And I was just working like crazy with all kinds of people, and that, you know, nobody's doing it. See, and I began to get this fuck 'em attitude. You know, if they want to get well, then they can just damn sure do what I did, and hell with it. See, and I'm just going to walk over here and be, you know, Mr. Spirit. And I started to get this real attitude, see, about newcomers and people in AA and all that kind of stuff. See, and finally, I just caught myself doing that one day, and I went, blam, see, this is nothing more than pride going on in me. Who the hell am I to say, you know, there's nothing to be learned by working with these people? And, you know, who am I to be, you know, demanding the blueprints and the results and, see, all that kind of stuff? See, but I had my own agenda, you know, judgments and full of opinions and all my own character defects and shortcomings, and I was just laying them on newcomers. See, left and right, I couldn't figure out why they were going like this. So they didn't want any part of it. Yeah.
One of the things, as far as listening goes, is an old Indian saying, my tongue will make me deaf. And boy, I didn't listen to that until I was able to do that inventory that made, as long as I was talking, I wasn't listening. And, it's incredible that all the stuff that I could have wanted myself and before coming to this program.
I know exactly what you're talking about. See,
Also, there's a lot more that I've done for years and years stuff that I've never heard, or anybody's never heard.
I went along, the more I learned and grew spiritually. Stuff that my sponsor had told me 2 years, 3 years previous, suddenly would go, oh, that's what he meant. And I thought I understood it back then. I didn't have a clue.
Just what we talked about.
Just like a time bomb. Bam! Oh, how could I have missed that one? Pride. It's one of the worst things about pride is that it really does keep us ignorant. All right. Anybody else? You got any more questions about step 6? Anything about step 6? Beginning to get a pretty clear view of it.
I wish you could go through all those 7 steps that you tried. That's brainstorming one more time.
Okay, well, what we can do is, if you'll all make your list this week, we can go over them next week before we move on, if you want to do that. If everybody does their homework, looks up the definitions and look at your own experience, might be very helpful. So you can share what you find in your own experience with everybody else in the group. That could be a very useful thing.